This is Charter Local Edition. Our roadshow continues. We're in Victorville today, and we are joined by Dr. Roger Wagner. He is the superintendent of the Victor Valley Community College District. Sir, I thank you for joining us again.
Pleasure to be here.
I know it's a relatively new position for you, so it's going all right, going well?
Going well, year and a half into the job.
Well, congratulations again. Sadly, in November, we experienced yet another school shooting, this one on a community college campus. This was in Oregon, Umpqua Community College, and it's hard to deny that when tragedies like that happen, we start to reflect. There was an incident at Santa Monica College before that. Well, that seemed to have been unrelated to the school, but talk to me about your mindset as we come out of Umpqua.
Yeah, well, certainly it's something that comes front and center when these tragedies happen, but it's not something that's the only time we think about it.
Well stated.
We are a community college that happens to have a commissioned police force. Not all community colleges are able to have that.
How do you have that?
Well, you know, well before my time.
Okay,
well
fair
before
enough.
my time. But we do have a commissioned police force, so we train for this. We're prepared for it. We actually trained jointly with San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department.
And so they have weapons, these
Absolutely,
officers?
yes.
So that's unique. That is
It's
relatively unique?
Relatively unique.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I think the UC system has its own police force, and the CSU may have its own police force
Yes.
at various campuses, but you don't think about community colleges having their own police force.
That's right. That's true.
And so when you think about having these armed, uniformed police officers on campus, do you feel as if that has been an effective deterrent to someone who may be suffering from mental illness and want to engage in harm?
Well, I think certainly it is a deterrent, maybe not a showstopper,
Sure.
but it's a deterrent. And that's what you're in the business of doing when you look at these things, is what can you put into place to deter these things from happening?
A challenge we face is the Americans, Californians, are so divided on the question of access to guns. It really is an issue of our time. And to give you a sense of how divided even the states are, in 2015, I think it was, California passed a law banning concealed weapons on campuses. Texas passed a law specifically permitting concealed weapons on campuses. Of course, this is not dealing with law enforcement, this is dealing with private citizens. And so, look, I know you're not a politician, so I don't want to push you too hard on this, but what's your sense about this question of, would it be beneficial to have students who are trained to have concealed weapons on campuses?
Well, it's certainly a controversial issue. I'll give
stated,
you that.
Yes.
Oddly enough, I just read an article this morning. On government property, generally speaking, weapons are banned.
Right.
But I read an article this morning where on Air Force bases, commanders are now given the options to allow concealed carry weapons on bases.
Well, we think about what happened at Fort Hood, I believe it was.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so where do we go with this conversation? Again, I don't want to push you. I know you're not elected, you're an educator, but I'm sure the question's been posed.
Yeah. I probably have a unique perspective on
Please.
this. I'm a retired military policeman.
Oh, okay.
21 years
You
law
have a
enforcement.
unique perspective.
So I do have
Yes.
a unique perspective on that. I will tell you that one of the things that was brought up in this article I read that made the military decide to give commanders
Right.
the option to carry concealed on bases is that the number of instances where these were stopped by citizens that were armed.
But the flip side is, and I'm just playing it out, I mean, one could imagine a scenario whereby a shooting starts and then these unarmed citizens pull out their guns and all of a sudden it's the Wild West and there are bullets flying.
Absolutely. And then law enforcement pulls up.
And more bullets are flying.
And more bullets are flying. And then the well-intended citizen finds themselves
Right.
the victims.
Right. So there's
absolutely.
probably no right answer.
There's
In
no
the
right
end,
answer.
it's a debate to continue to have. I do want to ask, I'd be remiss if I didn't, Victor Valley is in San Bernardino County. I know we're about an hour from the city of San Bernardino, but the city of San Bernardino just suffered a horrendous tragedy within the county facility, where we know there was a terrorist act which occurred, apparently inspired by radical Islamic behavior. How are you doing? How are your students doing as citizens of this region in the wake of that devastation?
Well, it's like we mentioned earlier. We think about it all the time,
Right.
As a responsibility as an administrator. But the campus in general,
Yeah.
those tensions and those feelings and the nerves, when those things happen, they go up.
But
And
do
then
we
they
think-
need reassurance from the administration. Are you thinking about us? Are you taking care of us?
But do we think about a terrorist act in San Bernardino? We think about a terrorist act in Los Angeles, in D.C., in New York, San Bernardino.
Yeah, but domestic terrorism can happen anytime, anywhere. Most of the time when we think about terrorism, we think of international terrorism. But think about really the first prominent act of terrorism in the United States that really caught us off guard was in Oklahoma City.
And it was a true domestic terrorist.
Domestic terrorist.
You talk about your students, and even though your students are adults, they're young adults. And we know, for example, with regard to the San Bernardino incident, that the perpetrators had plotted to go after a high school. I think it was in Fontana, I don't recall. I mean, these kids are a year out of high school, presumably. And so you hinted at it. What are you doing, the staff, your administration, to work these kids through the emotional challenges, the emotional landmines, if I can use that word, of these campus shootings, these shootings at the Inland Regional Center?
Yeah. Well, one of the things we do is beefing up our counseling, beefing up the opportunity to identify students that may have emotional issues.
And you know better than I, if someone's going to have a break, I mean a bona fide break, it's usually 18, 19, 20, 21. Am I wrong?
That's true.
Right.
About 45% of these outbreaks
Right.
of shootings have ended with the shooter.
Right.
Suicide.
Yeah. So it's a mental illness.
It's
I
a
mean, the
mental
terrorists
illness.
are the terrorists.
Right.
So explain to me what Victor Valley is doing in terms of mental health counseling. Because look, 10, 20, 30, maybe 20, 30 years ago, there was no mental health services. I mean, maybe, but no one really talked about it.
Yeah. Well, number one, our counselors are more tuned in and honed in on these
Right.
issues. Our law enforcement, our police department
Right.
are more tuned into this. We have a committee that screens our students when they're referred, and we do a better job of assessing these students and refer them to appropriate agencies.
It's got to be tricky because your students are now adults. It's not
Absolutely.
high school.
Yes.
It's college. I mean, I guess technically you could have a 17-year-old, but unlikely. So when you do have an adult in a student setting, how are you able to navigate? Because you cannot require them, I presume, or can you?
Well, it
Can you?
depends on just how serious it
Yeah.
is, because students can cross the line and
Right.
they can be referred. That we can actually, through a committee work, refer them for domestic counseling.
But can you say, for example, unless you go to XYZ counseling service, you will not be invited back on campus?
Absolutely, we can.
So that is, a carrot that's worth
Yeah.
having.
Once they cross a certain line,
I understand.
you know.
And has that been successful for you? Have you been able to use that, or have you not needed to use that?
No, we have used that.
And what happens in those cases?
Then they refer to behavioral counseling. If they successfully complete it,
And do they? Do they tend to?
they tend to.
Okay.
Then they come back and reintegrate into
Right.
the campus community.
Well, I want to thank you for what you're doing for the students of the Victor Valley. And again, congratulations on your new position.
Thank you.
I know you'll be going through accreditation soon, but I'm sure it will go swimmingly, smashingly
We hope.
well. His name is Dr. Roger Wagner. He is the superintendent of the Victor Valley Community College District. My name is Brad Pomerance in the Victor Valley. This is Charter Local Edition.